Welcome to another episode of the CarryTrainer Higher Line podcast. Hey guys, welcome to another episode of the Higher Line podcast. We've got an interesting guest on today. He's the breath master, Brian Mackenzie. And I follow your stuff. I've actually got one of your books that I haven't read yet, which I need to. You've got books on the New York Times bestseller list. I've got multiple friends that have books on the bestseller list, so I can't read everything all the time.
You do not need to explain that to me. I get it.
But I have it. You've got you're a endurance athlete, a coach, and you've got stuff that you've done that major universities are looking at your work on breathing and how that affects overall performance and validating what you're pumping out, right?
Correct. I'm very fortunate in the fact that I think I was willing to take risks in things that I wasn't very good at pretty early on. And I'm not by any means, I don't even consider, I'm not a breath master, but I just think we're taking kind of a very different, you're a breath master, sure. I understand some things that are, I've learned some things that I just wasn't getting information on, and I've been able to explore those things and get those set ideas looked at by or scrutinized by, professionals in academia, in the human performance world. And I've been given a lot of opportunities as a result of that. And I'm grateful for it. Very cool.
What's your background? How did you go down this path of that you're on here?
I grew up a punk rock kid in the 80s. I'm sure you can relate to something around that line. We look about the same age. I was very rebellious, but I had sports to lean on as a kid, and they probably more than likely are the catalyst in what stopped me from being too destructive. Although I was pretty destructive. I was very, I'd had a number of run-ins with the law, played with, drugs and alcohol a little too much when I was young. Got out of that young enough, and then stumbled into an exercise science class, and then was able to start critically thinking about things pretty early on. And I was mentored by a number of people that spun my world upside down. What I thought, was, you go into school and you're taught to memorize things, and I had questions beyond the memorization of things, and thus that began a process of exploration that I think that altered the fabric of how I started looking at the world. And that in essence had me, I don't consider myself an endurance athlete. I love the challenge of what endurance brings. And thus I, took a couple of approaches at endurance training early on in my career. One was,
wait a second though. You've run multiple 100-mile races on your feet.
I've done 200 milers. The people that I know and the friends I have and the guys and gals that I've worked with have run many 100-mile runs. This isn't a contest, but I wanted to understand what it was like to do something. And when I did it, I'll give myself credit for this. When I was doing this stuff, there wasn't really anybody looking at ultramarathons. Like ultramarathons were not a word, like in the context of society in any way, shape, or form. It was such a fringe little world, and it still is to some degree. But I had finished up doing Ironmans, during Ironmanning, and a lot of the stuff I had done in triathlon, and I got interested in ultramarathon. And at the same time, I was looking for something to make me feel like I wasn't broken down as much. And that was when we kind of switched that paradigm on the endurance world, where we took a skill-based approach with intensity and, you know, understanding mechanics within that spectrum, and then, you know, applying nutrition concepts, thinking, you know, a lot of the stuff you do with what you do, you know, and a lot of high level things.
When you're talking about broken down, are you talking about during the race, after the race, what happened after pushing yourself that far? Is that what you mean?
During the race, after the race, training for the race, you know, I mean,
just the abuse of that.
Yeah, you know, and I think the endurance community largely falls, I wouldn't say victim, but, you know, pretty close to victimology of, you know, suffering becomes the MO, and suffering is a choice. And although I think suffering is a part of the human experience, and I would say just about all of us, that's not I don't think suffering is the answer. I think suffering is a self-induced choice. What you can learn or grow from that becomes wisdom, right? And so you can actually flip that on its head and understand that there's other ways to do things, and that suffering isn't necessarily the way that it has to be.
Is it healthy? Is it healthy to run 100 miles?
I would say from a physiological perspective, there's probably not a lot, you know, after a certain point that is very healthy. You're damaging the body to a large degree, and it needs to rebound, and thus you can get better at these things, but, you know, you know, like, you can extend the time period in which your degeneration or the atrophy or the things that are occurring in that race aren't as bad as they once were. Nonetheless, I don't think, and I would say, you know, you'd need to look a little deeper into this, but anybody I've witnessed finishing an ultra marathon is not actually looking in the healthiest condition. Now,
that's what I'm talking about.
Myself included. That doesn't mean there aren't healthy individuals doing ultra marathoning. It's what happens throughout the course of these competitions, right? And thus, it's you know, hey, what's the goal and what are we doing here? And, you know, I'm not saying don't do these things. It's, hey, how are we doing these things, and how quickly can we get the body to respond and repair itself? And by the way, more time on our feet doesn't actually equate to the things that actually are what are falling apart, you know. And that's where strength and conditioning comes in. And it's like you have a choice to actually build the tissue, build the body in a way that, you know, it's a hack per se. You know, that's what strength and conditioning really is. You know, we're not what we were. You know, we are urban animals. We are not the human animal as much anymore, and thus we hack the lifestyles that we are designed genetically to handle.
Isn't that somewhat like a crazy irony that we, like, right now when I'm done talking with you, I'm going to change out of my pants and I'm going to get on my bicycle and go force myself to do meaningless work. You know what I mean?
Well, because you know what it does for you. Right,
but it's just an irony that we do that and have
it is. I never thought about it. And I am as a part of that as any human being.
Urban animal. That's a good way to look at it.
Yeah, the urban animal is the epigenetics. This is what I'm on this kick right now in writing. It's like urban animal is the epigenetics. Human animal is the genetics. And so we can alter the epigenetics, but you cannot alter the genetics. So the genetics have not changed. This is just deep conversations I have with a guy who lives with me on a routine basis and the people that I work with. But, you know, that's how I look at it, is like we have not altered our DNA. So thus we are, you know, designed to move a lot, pick up heavy things from time to time. And, you know, we hack these things by going and playing and you know, creating competitions or getting on bikes and thrashing ourselves for a little bit. And yet it's probably the greatest cure for depression or anxiety that's ever existed.
I don't disagree. Yeah. My buddy, Pat McNamara, says motion is lotion, which I completely agree with.
Yes, sir.
You've developed this, you guys do a program on breath, right?
Yes.
books, articles on it. Art of Breath is one of your programs, right?
Yeah, the Art of Breath is the course in the program we teach, and that resides on Power, Speed, Endurance, which is the program that actually the strength and conditioning and movement program that we put out.
Okay, so Power, Speed, Endurance is a website. It's a program.
Yes.
It's a
okay. Website with a subscription model on it and information.
Okay. So somebody would sign up for that, and then they would have access to this curriculum that you've created.
Correct.
So what's the mindset, or the not really mindset, but the thought process between this breathing stuff? So we're born, we don't breathe. The doctor slaps our ass. We start breathing, and seems for most of us, most of our lives. And I'm leading you along here a little bit. You're going to teach me stuff, but I have some insight in this. I practiced yoga for years, but we forget to breathe right. Like, why? What's the deal?
Well, it goes right back to that epigenetics thing. We've altered our way of living, but our genetics has not changed. And so breathing is a part of everything we do. It's connected to everything we do, and it's connected to the base layer of the medulla, where that is part of our autonomic processes, meaning they're on autopilot from heart rate,
digestion,
the blinking, digestion, all these things start to occur. Yet for those who decide to take the time to understand these things, is a lot of this stuff actually has conscious control to it. And so the breathing is special in that it doesn't require a whole lot of skill. You can actually just say, oh, I'm going to control my breathing. Or if I think about my breathing, most people cannot not volitionally control their breath, right? And then there's some breathing practices that actually, like Vipassana, that want you to just be aware of your breath so that you can actually just see what's happening with it, right? And a breath practice, breathing, has largely been at the foundation of our existence because of the profound effects that it's had. And yoga's been talking about this for about 5,000 years, as far as we know. There's probably something else out there and others out there that, have been talking. We just don't know about it historically. There's many practices in between here and there, between Tai Chi, martial arts, you name it, they implement it. And just oddly enough, we are, in the human performance world and a lot of the world at this point, have forgotten about a lot of this stuff or ignored these things. Our current lifestyles demand poor positions, so seated a lot or standing up a lot. We were designed to move more. We hack our little world, so we get really specialized in special things. You work with a lot of the operators who are very forward in their postures, and it becomes very difficult to open up and understand these positions. And this is where breathing really took its, it opened my eyes a bit big time, because I had put on a training mask, a resistance breathing device, like 6 or 7 years ago. And it instantly forced me to use my diaphragm more, which I instantly adjusted my position in order to get access to that diaphragm fully. And that just, lots of fireworks started going off, and lo and behold, I was like, oh wait, I've had some conversations with some folks who had been talking about breathing for quite some time, and they're like, the nose is actually our main vehicle for respiration, and the nose provides a resistance breathing device that we all have. It is responsible for the utilization of oxygen in the system. The mouth is an emergency vehicle for offloading carbon dioxide and needing to get more oxygen or air in when we've become more anaerobic, or we're becoming more anaerobic. We've kind of messed up lifestyles to some degree with the convenience aspect of things. And this in turn has had mechanical, physiological, and psychological effects as a result of that. And breathing is the first responder to most of these things, because we're always needing to do it, right? And so, you take somebody who's in a high risk situation or a high stress situation, and it instantly they go to hold their breath, and then they hyperventilate away, right? And these these patterns start to show up in a lot of things that people are doing, whether it's flying, whether it's in a car accident. It doesn't matter. But unfortunately, because of lifestyle, we are no longer genetically in these survival type environments, right? And so very rarely do we get to put ourselves in these places where we've developed the skills. And this is where someone like yourself and a lot of the people that you work in and around with are very skilled, is because you're prepared for those high survival instances. Thus, more than likely in non-survival situations, a lot of you people are using the mechanisms to remain not as reactive, meaning we're more parasympathetic dominant. I'm calmer in situations like, I just don't need to get in an argument with this idiot,
we use the term exposure through composure.
There you go.
Yeah.
There you go. Yeah.
I'm sorry.
So
composure through exposure. I said it the opposite.
Composure through, composure through exposure.
We remain composed because we've exposed ourselves enough time. And we teach combat breathing or diaphragmatic breathing, just in the sense of like after an action on the range or on the mat, to fill the lungs through the nose, just basic control the breath, slow the heart rate down. And what I've found it helps people do is, especially when I've got new people that are nervous to be in a group of people shooting guns and running around and doing this kind of stuff. People get, especially dudes, they get super nervous because they don't want to look stupid or foolish or like less than. And I'll go up and I'll put my hand on a guy's chest from behind, and he's running a $150, $160 beats per minute, just standing there, and I'll whisper in his ear, like, start breathing. You're holding your breath. And I've watched that so many times that I've become really cognizant. Like standing in the grocery store, I'll watch the guy next to me in line, not being a creep, but I'll watch his chest like move an inch and drop, move an inch and drop. Like, man, he's breathing really short and shallow. I wonder if he's a smoker. I wonder, I just start thinking about that. Like, why is he doing like that? Like, has he got purple lips? Is he going to fall over? But it's crazy how many people don't just even breathe like in a normal, smooth respiration, short, shallow, choppy.
Yeah.
I'm kind of rambling now, but
no.
As you were talking about,
you're spot on. I mean, the interesting thing is that I know professional athletes that are like that. We refer to professionals or elites as, and not just athletes. We could be talking about executives, whoever, as professional compensators. And they're just very good at compensating through the things that the rest of us are really bad at compensating with. So the human being will adapt to just about any stress if it's given time to rebound from it, right? Because everything is a stimulus. It's just, what's the response to that stimulus, and do I have enough time? And professionals become really good at that. And I've worked with a number of professional athletes who are short, shallow breathers, very, very, very poor CO2 tolerance. CO2 tolerance is actually the mechanism that we use to understand a lot of variables, and some of the stuff that's actually being studied right now is that it's connection to state anxiety or behavioral anxiety. Our CO2 tolerance, when it plummets, we are being very reactive. And so we've been able to see that pretty well, which also means if my CO2 tolerance plummets, I'm actually not utilizing oxygen very well, because I don't have enough acid in the blood, carbonic acid, which is CO2 in the blood, in order to offload CO2, which means I dip over and start into anaerobic processes, which mean, just has me flipping sympathetic much sooner. So
interesting.
So it's great that you guys are teaching what you're teaching. Where I would take that is, it's like, hey, I'd come out and I'll watch and observe how people are doing things. And then it's like, hey, where I start to implement things is, I take the yoga approach. You move from one position to another through breath, through control. We teach control, then we can teach, then speed can follow, you know? And so understanding how to move through a situation through breathing patterns, right?
Mm-hmm.
I start to really ingrain a pattern of understanding through my brain, and the plasticity starts to really pick up. And because I'm using my nose with a lot of, and not everything's about the nose. We teach a gearing system, and I can get into that a little later. But when we breathe through the nose, we're teaching more of a parasympathetic response. And it's not that exhaling creates parasympathetic response. This is where a lot of us have gone wrong, including myself. And what we found out is that it's inhibition of sympathetic response through the exhale. So the longer I can exhale, the more inhibition I get of sympathetic response, which is the beauty in what we're trying to do with many of the people we work with, is to calm them down.
The longer you can exhale, say that again.
The longer so a longer exhale than an inhale inhibits that sympathetic response. Inhale is a sympathetic response. On, right? And then so out. And so by nasal breathing, I'm actually inhibiting that. There's more of a parasympathetic tone that is brought on as a result of that, which means I'm in a learning place. I'm more peripheral. I see everything that's going on around me. Therefore, when I go into high sympathetic, if I've played with this, and this is the exact thing you're talking about with what you're teaching is, hey, if stressful situation comes down to it, like we're talking serious flight or flight, right? What's the programming that's been put in? Because that's where default happens. So the cortex is where the human animal has evolved versus the old animal that we were. And then below that base layer is our limbic system, which is the emotional response to the stories and the context that's being created in the cortex, right? And below that becomes the reaction. So when I create that emotional response to something, that is a trained, like I'm training something. So I may have some PTSD. I may have some things, and we all deal with this shit, right? Trauma. I may have just stories that I've conjured up or had based on things scenarios that have played out. And if I don't start to rewrite that map with controlled breathing and things, like I can use the controlled breathing to interrupt that process so that I'm not getting that physiological cascade of events to occur. Mm-hmm. So this is where I step in and start to really map things out for people to start to really look at so that they can actually take the things that they want to learn, whether that's closing a deal, not imploding under fire, or you're, talking about, keeping your shit together in a gold medal event, right? Yeah. It's, hey, what did we do in order to get here? What was the training to get here? And what I've found is that I went from very complex early on in my career to now we're simplified into, hey, where can we implement breath control into this and understand how hard you can go, what it looks like mechanically, and how long you can do it as a result of controlling that breathing and what we're trying to get out of that. All of these variables have a play in it, and breathing is just attached to it all.
You're using the breath and the breath control as maybe an anchor.
You got it.
Yeah.
And when it's go time, man. Yeah. And I mean, when it's go time, when it's competition time, when it's test time, you go. You do what you're training. You're supposed to be able to let go and get into that high focus space.
Hit the baseball. Give the sales pitch.
Hit it, man.
Whatever it is.
Yep.
Yeah.
Now, what happens immediately after that, and what's happening before that, and those become the critical points. As to where you're staying centered.
That makes good sense. We're talking about this breath stuff that makes me think about some stuff in my own youth. A brother and I, one of my brothers, we both suffered from chronic anxiety, like debilitating panic attacks as young men. And he's younger than I am, but different life path. But he and I in our 20s, remember one time having a discussion, and we did stuff. I owned a business. He went off to the Army. We both had kids, and like we were both sick of it, and like sick of this, like trying to come up with various ways to deal with it. And we had started learning different breathing controls and different breathing programs and things of that nature. That's kind of what got me into yoga. But he had this mindset, just let go, just like let go of whatever. And that started a journey kind of to where I am today. It basically did start with breathing, like realizing in a panic attack, this is a physiological response in my body, and I can kind of reground myself with my breath and then separate myself mentally from this physiological response happening. And I wouldn't be sitting here having this discussion because I'd have been too nervous to do it 20 years ago. So it's pretty darn cool. I only say that it's like an anecdotal story that I can relate to because it's my own life.
Yeah. I mean, I get it, man. I like public speaking was the hardest thing in the world. You know, I mean, I was so terrified of the first opportunity I got with that. And, you know, I was terrible. and luckily, there's just enough in me that I enjoy risk enough to like, be like, hey, what can I learn? What can I do better? Like, how can I do? And there isn't a time that I don't go talk or do something that I like, okay, that's where I screwed up there. That's where I screwed up there. But I'm not just going to focus on that. I'm going to focus on, you know, I'm also focusing on the fact that how much I've improved and where I've been able to communicate and allow that to happen. And is that playing out in my life as well? And are those points where I did feel things like anxiety or depression or whatever it is that was, you know, the thing that was messing with me or tweaking me? What am I learning from that? What are the instances of the things that are occurring and getting me there? And what are the tools that I have in the shed in order to actually access things in order to alter that thing so that I can actually retrain the landscape of it all and play the game, you know, contribute to the world, you know? And that's, you know, I mean, I commend you for figuring all that out. That's awesome, you know, and what you're doing for people is, you know, a testament to that.
I appreciate that. I wasn't saying that as like a pat myself on the back, but I
get it.
I'm just making sure people listening understand that it's amazing how, debilitating that kind of stuff can be. I've told this story before. I'll tell it super quick so you know it, but I had to give a speech once short to introduce a friend of mine to maybe like 400 or 500 people. And it wasn't a big deal. It was like, hey, this is my buddy Brian. He's awesome. He's an author. He's going to talk to you guys today. Give him a hand. And this is a political event, got a nice suit on, and all my friends are there. Normally, I wouldn't have even gotten very nervous about this, but I started thinking about it. And I went in the bathroom and realized that I was 150 beats per minute, sweat pouring out of me. I'm like, oh my God, I'm going to like shit my pants here. And I thought, you know what? I can just leave. I can get in the car and leave, and I can send a text message to somebody and tell them I didn't feel well. I'm an adult. They can't make me stay here. And I like rationalized all this shit. I'll get home. I'll crack a beer, see what's on Netflix. Life will be sweet. This is before Netflix, and I looked at myself and it was like, but you'll always do that. I'm looking in the mirror in the bathroom. I go, but you'll always do it. The next time you'll do it. And kind of like what you're talking about. Like I can go out there and it's meaningless. I mean, meaningless. This isn't some big game. It's not a sales pitch. It's not me saving somebody's life. It's me walking up onto a stage in front of a group of people that I mostly know. But that response in my body was a saber-toothed tiger's trying to eat me, climb a tree or whatever, you know, the house is on fire. That was the way my body was telling me, get away. And there's conditioning and my things I was exposed to in my life that made that the occurrence. But yeah, it's powerful, man. And so if somebody, this was going to be my next question, somebody that maybe has my experience or somebody that's like, I've got a lot of law enforcement military friends that have had to take life in very hellish circumstances. how can we take the same thing and apply it from one to the other? Like where does somebody, average Joe or world-class athlete or some super soldier or super cop, like where do they jump into this study?
Well, I mean, I've got some theories around it. I do know, based on some experience, with more, understanding breath control, you've got this mechanism that, you can use in order to calm things or change things, but you can't change the mind. It's the story, the context. Context is everything. It does not matter what's the situation. And, a good friend of mine, Fergus Connolly, has a theory, and we haven't looked into this, but it makes you think, and who doesn't get PTSD are terrorists. And, that's kind of a profound statement, in that I'm not trying to make, like, look, man, this isn't belittling people who get PTSD. It's trying to understand the mechanism of what's going on. And
they're attaching very positive emotions to their actions. They're proud and happy to do what they're doing.
You got it. And so when we fall into we've got first responders out there, whether we're talking military or law enforcement or, fire, or even, medic type people, our lives have been altered so much in how we've been raised and what we're put in front of and how easy things are. And so, I just saw that film. I forget the name of it, but it was about World War II, and it had all the footage of it, and
it was the one about World War I. It was called,
World War I. Sorry.
They shall not grow old. They shall not grow old.
They shall not grow old. It was fantastic.
That was amazing.
Man. And I was mesmerized.
They corrected the speed of the film to what our eyes see, so it wasn't that choppy. That was cool.
Yeah. Right? I think back to that, and it's obviously a very different time. And I'm not saying the men and women who are not serving right now aren't, capable of things. They are. But I do think that there's some things in how we've learned to create things or ideas around things that set us up for, if an instance happens, I have to attach myself to it in a manner that is me. And it's just an experience, and one experience does not make it you. And although it may be a difficult, thing that you've gone through or has happened, that doesn't mean you can't empathize with the situation or try and understand it, but you do need to be able to move forward with it. And that's what we call, that's being the adult version of what happens to us as kids. Because as kids, we carry this baggage of survival skills that we learned on how to grow up. Obviously I started off with, I was a punk, rebellious kid, right? Well, that one came with some baggage, man. And as I moved into adulthood, I needed to learn how to mold that idea. I don't need to take away the rebellious kid, but the rebellious kid needs to learn how to behave in a manner that isn't affecting other human beings in a negative sense, right?
Can't tell a coworker for something.
Go
you're not happy, or
although I'm 100% unemployable, the fact of the matter is it's like, I say that because I've employed myself for, more than 15 years at this point, but, it's I think that, the more we can get into solving the idea of why I'm doing what I'm doing, we're going to get back to the idea of, hey, when World War I happened, how many people jumped up out of their seats to sign up and go and be a part of something that they knew they may not come back from?
Yeah.
A lot of them.
Yeah.
You won't see that today. It's just not going to happen. There will be some, and we know, and you and I know a lot of those individuals, right?
Yeah.
And I'm like, this isn't to take anything away from those, but we need people who are in that type of mindset. We don't need people to jump up and say, I need to go to war. We just need people in that mindset. And I think, for a lot of the people that get caught up in this stuff, it's difficult because, man. Social media exists. The internet exists. People can talk shit and have an opinion. They think their opinion matters on anything and everything that they have no basis of inputting. And so what I've learned to do is understand that even though there's people out there praising what I'm doing, if I decide I need to pay attention to that, I have to decide I need to pay attention to the criticism. And the fact is I've had to learn how to stop looking at the praise and start looking at who the I am and why I'm doing what I'm doing and how I'm contributing that to the world. And I'm doing this because I know deep down, for me, that there's something people can get to like I got to, and it's going to help in some way or shape or form. But they got to open that door, and they got to be willing to go through that door in order to understand that stuff. And as long as we can continue to think, as long as we continue to think that somebody's opinion on the internet matters, we are going to be chasing something that is not real. It just doesn't exist, man. It really doesn't. It's just this place that we've created so anybody and anything can have an opinion on things, and yet, you know, it's who are you? Are you on the stage with me? Are you up with me, working with me day to day? Do you even know me? Like, have we spent any time together? Like, you know, it's just an odd world. Granted, you and I are having this conversation because of that internet and the social media as well, which means it does have some great things to it. It's so early on. We're just learning how to play with it, and we're just, you know, getting caught up in shit.
I look at it a little different. I look at it like it is life. It's just instead of me meeting you at the mailbox or the gas pump or the grocery store or the barber shop, I'm seeing you in this cyber barber shop or whatever you want to do it. And it has allowed people to, we're a global community now. When you and I were kids, Dick Tracy was created in the town that I live in. Chester Gould, the creator of Dick Tracy, lived here in my town. And he wore a watch, remember, that you could look at, and like it was like a TV and a cell phone and all that shit. That's absurd. Even when you and I were kids, and we're not that old, and now all of us walk around with a GPS and a phone, and it's absurd. But my point was, it's just it's like when people say, "Oh, he's just drunk," and then what us intelligent people say, "Well, no, he's just being an asshole because he's an asshole, and the alcohol took away the inhibition." It's like the internet is alcohol, man. It's like it just lets people just be themselves. Yeah. You can be in your bedroom saying whatever.
You are exactly right. No, I do not disagree. And in the same frame, it's like I look at it in that same frame. Like this is just a world that I'm like, hey, people want to behave that way. Guess what? You're just playing your cards, man. Yeah. If you don't know how to behave here, it's obvious who we're dealing with. But it's just understanding what we're doing and allowing things to get into our heads that doesn't, really allow us to process things correctly.
Stay on task. You're keeping yourself on task at hand. Which, right back to your mission. This guy doesn't matter.
Nope.
Right? Yep. It's true. I think some of the stuff we're talking about, some people that listen to this podcast for sure, I know will enjoy it, which is why I wanted you to come on here. I want to comment real quick on your and your pals theory. I just thought about a lot of friends of mine, high-level special operations guys. Most of the guys I know are pretty solid as far as PTSD will go, and they'll tell you. They'll say, hey, man, I'm not knocking anybody that has it. I mean, I suffer from what a doctor would clinically describe as PTSD. A doctor's told me this. But they'll tell you, I've got a really good friend, a ranger, that could describe to you the most graphically vivid, horrific scenes of violence. And he goes, it doesn't really cause me to lose sleep because I know what I was doing. If I didn't do it, those people were going to go continue to try to kill my brothers. Not even some like altruistic, I was saving the world. Just to him, They were trying to hurt my brothers. I stopped them from doing it, period. End of discussion. And that attached to the context of what he was doing was I stopped them from hurting my friends. Why would I feel bad about that or lose sleep over that? I'm proud of myself. And I hear things like that. So I think it's spot on. I joke around. I probably shouldn't say this, but I will. I joke around with young dudes. I tell them, be careful what you look at and think about when you're jerking off. Because the shit, we had a conversation in class. We had a conversation with a group of dudes in class. Check this out. Check it out. I had a group of conversations, and we can edit this out if it's too much for you, but this was funny.
No.
Group of dudes in class, and we're busting balls. It's all men, no women there. And one of them's talking about, something stupid. And I said, we were talking about some freak that he knew. And I said, you ever wonder what makes some guy some freak, like the guy that wants to get peed on or the dude that wants to peek over bathroom stalls? Like, what makes something happen at that person that made them enjoy whatever creepy thing it is that so I'm joking with him, and I go, statistically, one or two of you dudes is a freak. One of you's got some weird closet full of latex dresses or whatever. And so I said, just be careful what it is you put in your brain while you're at these high levels of dopamine, because shit gets stuck.
Yes, sir.
Yeah.
Yes, sir.
So there was some reasoning to that.
Yeah.
Just like that high level of stress, and then you attach images and thoughts and feelings and smells. Like you're talking about the limbic system. I smell lilac bushes when they bloom around here, and I can see my mom hanging clothes on the clothesline like instantly. The smell of lilacs. I see my mother putting clothes on the clothesline on the farm we grew up on.
If I smell tea rose, I instantly see my grandmother.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, that's powerful stuff. And some people, they smell certain cologne and they immediately think of violence because it was their dad's cologne or whatever.
Yeah. Triggers, man. Triggers. Got to understand them. And so, it's like, what am I doing to remap that stuff or help me in those instances where that's happening?
I figured you could handle that discussion as a punk rocker.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, ex-punk rocker, but yeah, I can definitely handle that discussion. I appreciate that discussion. That's a very thought out.
That's the kind of shit we talk about at lunch at CarryTrainer classes.
That's awesome.
I honest to God think that of all the good that the internet's done, it's also made people so scared. I got to be careful what I say because it'll be there.
Well, I live in the Bay Area, man. You got to be real careful here.
Yeah. I'm not talking about attacking anybody or
no.
Just I don't want anybody to know that I talk about certain things. Like, it's for real. Like, come on.
Yep.
It's legitimate. So somebody goes to Power Speed Endurance and they sign up for some of these courses. What's it look like? How does that work? Is it are they interacting with humans ever? Is it just downloading videos? Is there physical seminars or events that you hold that people can attend? So
the Art of Breath, we have an online course for the 101, and then we also teach that 101 version globally. And we have a staff that does that, and occasionally I'll do that as well. Like I'm going to London and Lisbon in August to do that. And those are interdependent. And so we shot that course, the 101, and it's standardized. And so, if you don't want to travel or it's not coming near you and you wanted to do it, it's a performance-based seminar. So it's teaching how we're integrating breath into a performance situation, which means any type of situation that involves higher level of stress, right? And so that's our base layer for that. We'll have a 102 that I think we're doing in October, if I'm correct, where we're going to be doing the higher levels of these things. And then Power Speed Endurance itself has programs based on whether you want to largely we take an endurance approach to things, but we integrate strength and conditioning, whether it's movement or whether it's, your run, swim, bike, tactical. We have these types of programs that are integrated with strength and conditioning, and that is a subscription-based program that's on like a 9-week cycle that our coaches work with, and are available for information that, if you have questions, etc. But more or less, it's an online program that does that allows you to kind of progress, and it has the breath stuff integrated, the breathing gears, which the big thing we've developed in performance is a gearing system, and understanding that although your heart rate might be at 150, if I've got you to control your breathing in a slow, controlled manner, it's not going to matter, because we're actually teaching you how to control things. Now, most people aren't going to be able to do that. And
so talk to me. I'm on my bike, riding balls to the wall, 10 miles of hard pumping up and down hills. I'm at $150. I decide I'm, redlining out.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm huffing and puffing. So what I want to understand what you're saying.
Yeah. So, I mean, if you're doing 10 miles on your bike, there's no reason for you to be huffing and puffing.
I'm going up and down hills, man.
That's perfectly fine. So,
okay. So I'm at 90 miles. I'm just
totally same concept, right? So here's the thing. The gearing system we use is how fast the breathing changes. We start with a nose only gearing system, meaning it goes nose in and out, which is an equal inhale in and out. Then it goes up to a faster gearing where it's a fast in, relaxed out, then a fast in, fast out, which would be 3. And then nose in, mouth out fast, which is a gear 4, and mouth in, mouth out, which is gear 5. Getting people to understand the gearing takes time, because most people are aerobically inefficient when we start this. Not all, but most. I would say probably in the 85-90% range. So when I say that, I mean, can you maintain a nose in and out, equal in, equal out inhale, what you're doing for something that's supposed to be aerobic, right? And that starts to tell us.
Let's get a good idea of what you're talking about. So for an average
5-kilometer run.
Okay. And so through a 5-kilometer run at a decent pace, you should be able to maintain all of your respiration in and out of the nose. Got it.
Yep. And if you can't, that just means you're becoming more anaerobic. Thus, you need more air in, and you need to offload more CO2 off, because you're now dealing with more anaerobic processes, which are kicking off lactate and hydrogen ions, which most of that oxygen is now going to in order to buffer, right? So this is where we start to retrain the system in high stress situations to become more aerobic. And our theory is that aerobic efficiency lies at the heart of all abilities, whether we're talking psychological, physiological, or mechanical. My inability in order to maintain aerobic efficiency or get back to aerobic efficiency quickly is a telltale sign in how well I'm actually going to maneuver, right? And be able to recover, be able to respond to something, etc. Because if I'm a high stress person all the time, that is a recipe for disaster. We see that in high sport all the time. And so learning how to manage that becomes critical. And so we lay that base layer with pretty much just telling people, hey, shut your mouth for the first 3 to 4 weeks of all training. And then we can start to move into understanding gears 2, 3, and 4, and then maybe move into gear 5 after a few weeks of understanding when that starts, and the whole system restructures itself on how it's operating. And we most of the time what we see is I don't even think I've run into a time where we haven't seen incredibly positive effects that have occurred as a result of the retraining of this.
Sounds very cool. Let's go back to this 5K runner. So somebody listening to this, they're like, hey, I like to jog, I ride. I am finding that I can't run 5K without mouth breathing.
Mm-hmm.
Are you suggesting that person should just keep their mouth shut and keep running and force themselves, or do they need to increase their endurance and get healthier, I guess is the way I'm
endurance isn't the problem. So endurance would refer to just being able to, basically go longer, which would be aerobically, right? That is basically what we're missing is we may have a mechanical problem or we just have a physiological problem. Either way, slowing that person down to where they can keep their mouth shut is what we do. And this is where the problem.
When you say slow them down, are you saying slow down respiration or slow down like physical movement?
Slow down physical movement.
Okay.
We need to understand more control.
Okay. That's kind of what I was driving at. So this person needs to not be pushing themselves so hard, slow down the actual run so that they can keep their breath in a controlled state and keep running or moving, but not run till they're having a mouth breathe and vomit.
You got it. Yep.
Okay. So the guys that go out and train and push themselves, and maybe this is a loaded question, till they're puking and maybe aren't doing themselves a favor.
I mean, that has a very quick end to it. Whether we're talking injury or metabolically.
Okay.
Things that will go on, things that will tilt off.
I know a lot of guys, that's how they train, man. They go like until like, good session, man. I puked. Like I hear that all the time from dudes. And I've worked out hard enough, like especially like in jiu-jitsu or something where you're just so sweaty.
Oh, yeah.
You're overheating and you're like, I'm ready to hurl. Can't get your breath.
I'm in my gi right now, getting ready to get going after that. I get it, but even in the fight community, I mean, we just spent a week out at International Fight Week with the UFC and working with fighters all week. The people we've worked with just in the fight community, especially in jiu-jitsu, and hey, keep your mouth shut for the next 4 weeks, 3 weeks. Watch what happens. It sucks at first. Then all of a sudden, the adaptation starts to set in and you have way more control of what's happening and you become more aware of your opponent's breathing patterns. And when they start, you've got them beat. They've popped. I mean, what mouth open, jaw open in a fight is a good scenario? None. And so that becomes, we're aware of all of this, but thinking I need to go until I puke every time is not understanding principles. Like you're missing principles, and what you're doing is just suffering, and that's just getting better at suffering. And I've played that game. I've done it, and I know what it's done for me, and I know what it's done for a lot of the athletes and people who I've worked with. And there's a reason why you've got to actually take more of a 60 to 80% rule of, it's not necessarily low intensity, but it's like understanding energy systems and metabolic control. And this is what breathing, this is why we measure respiration in metabolic tests, is it is the judge, jury, the convictor of what's going on inside metabolically, because what oxygen I bring in, the amount of carbon dioxide I bring out, is the identifier in what's happening metabolically. So if I have more carbon dioxide that comes out than I have oxygen going in, I've become more anaerobic.
I dig it. So that fighter that you're telling shut his mouth for a month, just like the runner, he's got to temper himself or herself during that training to not pass out, but to continue to develop that awareness of breath, keep his mouth shut or her mouth shut. And
you got it. And think of an operator over in some odd country going on a mission that they don't know how long it's going to take. It's only supposed to take 24 hours in and out, but it goes a little longer. If my mouth is open and I'm, out of my mind with conditioning. What happens to me metabolically? I tank sooner. My thinking, once we're maxed, we are maxed, you only go to defaulting. You default into our survival type skills. And this is, it just becomes a recipe for disaster. This is where the importance of understanding this when I go to the range, or, when I'm jumping, or when I'm doing these things and we're working with these folks, that it's like, hey, we need to understand, we can understand what's going on just by paying attention here in training, so that when the scenario hits the fan, my brothers have my back and understanding, hey, bro, your breathing is off. Control, it just changes a lot of things, man. It changes all things is what it ends up doing. Just takes a little bit of time. You just gotta knock the ego back a little bit.
That's a big one. How can this all just be related to how I'm sucking air in and out? You have no idea what I've been through. This has nothing to do with just breathing. Trying to make it sound like it's just nothing. That's kind of what it seems like to a lot of people. It's kind of just brushing off big issues, but I'm with you. The books that you've written, what are they called? Where do people find them?
Power, Speed, Endurance was the first one. Then there's Unbreakable Runner. That is the written kind of version, the storyline behind the whole idea behind Power, Speed, Endurance. It's a great read that kind of solidifies what's happened to a lot of the endurance athletes and people we've worked with over time. And then the last book we wrote was Unplugged. And that is about our addiction to technology and fitness. And it kind of drives home this point we've been talking about here is, getting back to understanding my breathing. I've had many a time where I've relied on my heart rate for things, and heart rate's just the tachometer, man. If I know how to switch gears, if I'm in the appropriate gear for where the tachometer's at, and I learn to control that, I can end up managing that tachometer and bringing that thing down.
So you were saying, and I'm making sure people listening understand, you're saying that you were looking at your pulse, riding, running, whatever it is you're doing. Okay, it's at 120. I'd like to see her down at 110. And that was the thing that you were looking at versus the breathing versus the respiration.
Yeah. And it's not that you can't look at heart rate, but you should, look, if you're going to have heart rate and you're going to be looking at it, correlate it. You got to triangulate that shit, right? We all understand triangulation here, right? We'll triangulate that shit back to something that's biological.
Yeah.
Start to pick up on things and understand that even though your heart rate's up, that the heart rate's late, man. The heart rate is late to the game. It's still an indicator of something, but nonetheless, it is not an indicator of what it is I'm burning. Okay? It just means the intensity.
It's just moving the fluid.
Yes. And it's moving things, right? And so if my heart rate's up, if I can control my breathing, I'll bet you I can start to learn how to control my heart rate. And you'd be surprised what happens with enough time spent learning how, spending 5 or 10 minutes. We created an app called State Breathing. It's on the App Store.
Say it again. What's it called?
State breathing. You can find it. And it literally fingerprints you based on how you emotionally handle stress. So we figured out that not everybody fits into the same protocol, right? So tactical breathing or box breathing is great. It's a great start, but that rhythm does not work for everyone was what we found. And this was the big thing we started to understand. It was like, hey, if I've got somebody who deals with a lot of anxiety, doing an inhale, a breath hold, an exhale, and a breath hold is probably going to is not going to be very good, the best thing for them, because those breath holds tend to set some people off, right? And so understanding all this stuff, we started to figure that out. And then we use a CO2 tolerance test, which is just a max exhale test to understand how well you handle carbon dioxide, which is telling us how well you handle oxygen. So we set up breathing protocols that work throughout the day. And so you just doing a 1 5 or 10 minute session a day, or 2 of those a day, retrains the system enough in order to get the body after a week or two to start to respond in ways that alter everything that's going on physiologically.
State
semicolon breathing. Yep. And if you go to shiftstate.io, you'll get all the information on it and the links to the Google Play or iOS.
So this app, once you've got it on your phone or device, notifies you it's time for a breath practice?
It won't. You can set it up for notifications, yes,
Okay.
but it has them as they start throughout the day. There's one for feel alert, so it's like a kind of a morning coffee version. Then there's one for being present, which is kind of like, hey, I'm going from one task to another. That'd be a good idea to do some learning how to switch things, down regulate, but then uptick, come back into it. There's a feel calm, which is great for post-training sessions, doing about 20 or 30 minutes after. And then the big one is the fall asleep, especially for our operator and military community who have a lot of trouble sleeping. That fall asleep protocol helps with down regulation massively, and it helps build CO2 tolerance so that I'm actually learning how to lean into stress more, because stress ain't going anywhere.
Sure.
That's how we survive, is stress. We can't take away stress. It's how we're managing the stress. So learning how to lean into that will literally allow you to play with that. So we're giving people options like if you download this, your app is going to be completely different from mine. And then when you go through the protocols or the exercises, it adjusts based on how you answer the questions at the end, or if I needed to restart it because it was too difficult or too easy, right? It self-adjusts, so it's got an algorithm based in it so that I'm literally training folks. And I mean, look, a lot of these guys and gals are using heart rate variability, and that's great. Those are good metrics to track. The fact is that stuff ain't real when I'm in real time and I'm in competitive mode or I'm on a mission. The one thing that is with you is going to be your breathing and understanding, hey, I can get through this protocol. I know I can get through a 5-5-10-5 protocol, no problem, baseline. And I can repeat that 5 or 10 times, and that puts me in a good place. But if I can't hit that and I'm somewhere that I need to be hitting that, what are the tools I've got in order to alter that? And we're teaching people how to do that with this app.
I'm going to download it when I'm done talking to you. I was looking for it, but I don't want to keep screwing around on the phone. What's your resting heart rate?
It's in the 40s somewhere.
That's pretty good.
It's cool. Breathing alone.
I'm not an endurance athlete.
I probably spent a good 3 years just really focused on breath work, like understanding the different methodologies, because that's why the app is built the way it is. It's not a method. It's principles based. We're using different methods throughout this thing that work for individuals to do specific things. Right.
Very
and
cool.
So, I really looked at that. And so my fitness wasn't really a priority in those times. And I was able to take my heart rate, my resting heart rate, and drop it, probably 12 or 15 beats in that time frame alone, just based on using breathing.
Not out grinding it, doing calisthenics.
Correct.
I'm trying
to implement those things.
I want to make sure that other people listening can find it.
Yeah, if you type in state and then colon, right? Then type in breathing. It should pop up. Yeah.
So
shiftstate.io. Yep. Is the website.
Yeah, I see it. I found it on Google Play right away, but it was not called the same thing. It just says state, my state, health and fitness.
Yep.
Is that
perfect? Right? Yeah. So my state on the Google, and then state breathing
and it's free?
There's a free version. There is a subscription version, which is the fingerprinting process.
I want why do you want my fingerprint? Are you trying to are you like the Illuminati?
It's your fingerprint.
Okay. Yeah, but then your app
for you.
Yeah. I'm kidding. I found it.
Yeah. Totally.
Download that. we covered a bunch of ground here, and what I really was excited about was being able to introduce somebody that's a specialist in this field. I know you downplayed it and said that you're not a master of it, but online it says, hold on.
Oh,
It says, Brian Mackenzie is an expert in the development and application. So it starts out with expert.
Yeah, we need to get rid of that expert word. I don't like. I'm not a fan of that. I don't put up all that stuff.
I like the word expert. It's okay. Okay. I didn't call
it. It is
you.
okay, but look, I've done enough work in here is that, becoming an expert in something typically means that I've got, more of an understanding than most. And I know a lot of people who understand more than I do.
It doesn't mean that it's not a negative thing. I mean, I wouldn't have called you up because, like, hey, I got a Joe Schmo on here that doesn't know shit, doesn't really amount to much. I'm just an everyday ordinary guy. No, that doesn't.
Fair enough. Yeah.
This was going to be my point. So I appreciate that you shared a little bit here, but as you said, this is something people have to study. This isn't like, hey, let me show you this cool thing. You're showing people a map to get somewhere cool. And I'm going to go and probably sign up for your online program.
Just shoot me an email.
Cool. I will.
Yeah.
But I want to, I probably want to have you back on here again, at some point and talk about, after I get a chance to delve into some of your material, and I got to get that book read. I often ask people, if you only get to visit with people one time, some of the people listening here, hopefully they go follow you, but if they never cross your way again, what would you have to say to them?
What do you want?
I love that. That's one of my favorite things to ask myself. Yes.
Yeah.
What brought you to the point that is the thing that immediately burst?
You tell me what you want, and we know what you're going to do.
I dig it.
Yeah.
I like that. What is it that you want?
I want to contribute to the world, man. I really just want to contribute to the world, and in a positive way, And
I like that.
Creativity is at the height of that. I consider myself an artist, is what if anything, that's it. It's just, I've chosen a medium that people don't really look at as art,
Artist of air.
Yeah. Well, I mean, artist of human performance, of human development. I'm really, by the time everybody catches on to this thing about breathing, we're going to be moved on. And talking about another variant, and that's called evolving. And it's not that breathing doesn't matter. Breathing does matter. It's just a tool, though, and principles are greater than methods, which are greater than tools, and it's understanding the tool I'm using, understanding the mechanism for getting what I need to do with that, but understanding the underlying principle of that. And that is, a breath work. It's energy, man. It's just energy. And what am I doing in order to move that energy? And how can I contribute to the world and understanding what it is I've learned, so that I can not only progress myself, but I can shine a little bit of a different light on it, so that I can help some individuals solve some things that they may be struggling with, regardless of what that struggle might be. I don't give a f*** learning how to shoot your gun faster. Like, I think there could be some really cool stuff we could do, like in laying out scenarios with what you're already teaching, and how we integrate some things into that. Like, it piques my, turns my creative button on, just as much as like me making bread, which I got into like 3 years ago, and I thought it would, I never thought I'd be into making bread. But holy shit. Like, I'm in
my sister, man. My sister has a big wood-fired oven up on an island in Maine, and she makes mountains of every kind of crazy loaf.
That's fantastic. Yeah, that's fantastic. But that's just,
you're not a fat ass. You can eat bread.
I can't. Well, I mean, I don't eat it all, because I know, like, but so anyway, it's,
people poo-poo bread.
Nah, not if you're making it from scratch, man.
Yeah. Good bread's good for you, I think.
Good bread is good for you. There's a reason why it's as older, it's probably one of the oldest foods we've eaten.
A little wine, you're good to go.
Yeah.
I dig it. How do people find you?
Power, Speed, Endurance. Easy. They can reach out. My Instagram handle is @_Brian Mackenzie. And that's where I'm most active. I don't answer a ton on there, but things filter through Power Speed Endurance for sure.
That's
content wise, I just try and unload my thoughts in my head on Instagram. It's just a portal for me to kind of write and put things out.
It's where I follow you there. That's how I got a hold of you. Not that that's, as you just said, a place that you're always communicating through. You're an insightful guy, man. The stuff that you're pumping out. Sometimes I've said this before, but I'll say it again now. We toss around words these days like Jedi or master. You hear people say that. I'm a ninja. I'm a Jedi. You hear people say that shit nowadays. Like it's almost like a silly cliche. It's like, no, you're not. Like a Jedi doesn't call himself a Jedi. But some of the stuff that you're talking about, you have to sometimes go down a path a little ways. Like the way I see it is like, if you're in the woods and you're trying to get over there, you might know what over there is, but you can't see it till you get there. And what you're talking about, to some people listening, it might be like, what the are they talking about? And it's not, it's because you've gone too deep, not too deep, but you're deep enough that you're seeing things now in a broader sense. And it's awesome. And I'm challenging people listening to, go take a look at the stuff that he's putting out, because there is so much more out there. And the little things that we're looking to improve, like energy drinks and fancier tennis shoes and better holsters and all that crap, that's not where performance comes from.
That's just the confusion,
there might be little goofy little gains when you're very new into things, but there were guys running 4-minute miles in Keds.
Yeah.
Or some such.
Oh, I mean, you'd be surprised. I mean, they've done some studies on Jesse Owens and current runners and the track setup, the technology setup, the timing setup, everything. And
he was running on like cinders and dirt.
He was running on cinders, and he was digging his own little setup. And we're not much faster right now. We are not.
I believe it. Except
and I would bet that if Jesse Owens was put up against Usain Bolt in the scenario that we have right now, it'd be a very different race.
Are you talking about the kind of rubbery track?
Rubbery track, the track setup, the timing systems, the training like ideas. Yeah. The training, all of it,
So when you hear people say like, we're getting better, like, faster and things like that, you don't buy it. Humans are humans.
I don't like to be totally cynical. Like, I'm optimistic about the future, but I think we're confused. The rise of mental disease is probably an indicator of that. It's going to be the biggest killer in 2025, surpassing heart disease and other diseases. It already is rapidly, and that this is just.
I did not know that. That's a pretty staggering stat.
That's why I'm so invested in this work right now, because I've seen such a change, not only with adults, but namely children and kids that, when we were raised, we were told to be home when the lights came on and stuff. Yeah. Kids aren't even going outside anymore. The neighborhoods aren't fit. Like, there's a couple kids on my block, which makes me, I swear to God, it gives me like butterflies, like just the best feeling when I see these kids playing out in the street like I used to play. But there's just nowhere, like, I don't see it anywhere else.
Dude, my wife and I, we go for walks. We live in a nice quiet neighborhood, and it's a couple miles around the hood. We go walk the dog a couple times a day. And yesterday, this whole weekend with the 4th, we walked every day, and we said yesterday, we haven't passed any children. Like, it's summer, they're not at school. There's like literally no kids, and we did not pass any children in our entire neighborhood. And there's kids that live here because the buses and stuff drive through all school year. You're right.
Yep.
Yeah. Rotting brains out.
It's just, and I don't know where it's headed. I'm optimistic about it, but I don't, I think we continue to be fascinated with, there's nothing wrong with technology, but if we continue to think technology and convenience is going to solve our problem, that's the confusion. We don't understand biologically what we are truly capable of. We understand more about the universe than we do about our own brains. And
that's crazy when you think about it.
Like, look, man, we got what if a car falls on a kid, you know, and this is just, you know, the situation is played out, and a mother can lift that car off that kid. You know, what aren't we tapping into and understanding about ourselves? Because she wasn't spending time at Gold's Gym or World Gym deadlifting with professional power lifters. How did she do that? What is she doing? And I'm not downplaying power lifters or, you know, people lifting or CrossFitters or operators or what, you know, but we are confused. I see it in the military, you know, what the military chases.
With our shooters, I talk about this. Why can a major league shortstop, how can he see a ball and get himself in front of it at 120 miles an hour coming off a bat in a quarter of a second? Like, he's tapped into parts of his brain, not just the physiological part, but the brain.
Or hitting a golf ball.
Yeah.
Or jumping in the ring, you know, to fight somebody, you know, at that level. You know, I mean, dude, I mean, I've played around with some of the world's best combat fighters, and it's like getting into a cage with a lion. Like, I should not be here. I should. It's like, I mean, it was the first time, you know, like the only time I've shot a full auto, you know, assault weapon. I was like, you know what? I shouldn't be shooting this weapon. I'm not going to have enough training. Yeah, I'm not going to have enough training in order to utilize this weapon, you know. And, you know, it was very apparent. You know, I'm good with my 9mm. I'm good with my shotgun. I'll keep it at that.
That's funny.
Yeah.
What you're touching on is your other book that we sidetracked, Unplugged.
Yeah.
So that's kind of what that book is about. What you're talking about now, this rise of all of our connections.
What are we feeling, man? What do you feel it? Do you understand where your level of skill's at and what you can handle and what you can't? You understand fear, what's going on with that fear, how you're reacting to that fear, what's it doing to you? I mean, you know, you ask me what I want, and, you know, and it's like, I want to learn, but I want to create and I want to contribute to the world. And that's what learning is about, you know, and remaining in that learning state of like, hey, does shooting a bow excite me? Does shooting a gun excite me? Does, you know, riding my bike excite me? Does deadlifting excite me? What does breathing excite me? What is it bringing to me? And what do I want to learn from it? And how deep down in the well am I going to go with this? Is it going to become a rabbit hole? What's it going to be? And that's, you know, chase it. Go after that rabbit, be Alice, and let it take you to places that you never would have thought. Because I'll tell you what, I did not think I was going to be studying yoga the way that I study yoga. I participate in yoga, you know, and look at, I'm a diehard ex-punk rock performance junkie who is talking about breathing. What is that?
That's good
like
stuff.
my friends are boogeymen, you know, like yours. Like, like real dangerous, you know, in all walks of life. And I'm just, you know, hey.
Do you guys have any incense?
No, I don't know. But I do burn some sage from time to time, you know.
Clean out the spirits.
That's right, brother.
Hey, I got a gig.
Hey, I pay respect.
In Concord.
Yeah.
Concord, California. How far is that from you?
Hold on. I don't know. It could be.
I've got a gig up there this October, a couple-day class. Maybe we hook up then.
Concord, California. Concord. Oh, man. You're like an hour. You're 40 minutes from me.
Come take the course. Come be my guest. Come be my guest.
Yeah, brother. Send me the dates. Just shoot me an email. Send me the dates, and I'll send you over our course stuff.
Yeah, that'd be awesome, man. That'd be awesome. I appreciate you taking the time. I've got to get into some Speedos and get on a bicycle. Try to keep my mouth shut.
Wow. Go get it.
Trying to work on my tan. I'm
gonna go fight.
I like it. I've been nursing a busted shoulder. I haven't been on the mat in a month. Not busted.
Man, I went a year. I went a year and a half without being able because of a neck injury and shit. But I finally got to get back, and I'm absolutely just enjoying the hell out of it right now.
Nothing makes you feel better than an hour or two of rolling around. As long as you don't hurt yourself and you're with people that respect you. Well,
I mean, nothing is better than two human beings agreeing to agree on one has won and one has lost.
Yeah.
And putting some high level intensity into it. Knowing that I am going to probably lose on more than one occasion here, and I'm going to learn some things.
Yeah, it's awesome. I'm very fortunate to have a lot of very high level BJJ guys in my circle of friends. So I'm the by far lowest of the low of the low of the low on that totem pole, which is cool.
You and me both.
I threatened to shoot him in the guts.
Yeah.
That's a joke. Yeah, I appreciate your time, man. You folks that have listened, head over to the websites. We'll throw the links up. If you're watching on YouTube, hit subscribe, hit the like button. You've got a bunch of stuff up on YouTube as well. You've got a lot of videos up there, seminars, things of that nature.
Oh yeah, there's a lot of content that you guys, people can dig into for free.
Yeah, if you just Google Brian's name, Brian Mackenzie, Mackenzie, and that's a capital K, you will see tons of information. You guys be well, and tell somebody you love them. Don't be a dickhead, and remember that if you're mouth breathing, there's probably something wrong with you.
Thanks, Mickey.
Of course, man. Thank you. Visit our website, CarryTrainer.com, for information about classes held throughout the U.S., CarryTrainer apparel, and upcoming projects. You can also email us at training@CarryTrainer.com for information about setting up your own private course or speaking engagement. Training@CarryTrainer.com or CarryTrainer.com.